What's up, football fans? What's up, Ravens flock? Thank you for tuning in to the Third Bowl. I'm your host, Devin Welsh, and in today's show, we're going to talk about some mock drafts. We're going to talk about Deandre Hopkins coming to the Ravens, and we're going to talk about the Ravens' potential offensive coordinator for the future. So, thank you so much for tuning in, and let's get into it. So let's start off the show by talking about some mock drafts and reviewing who the Ravens select with their first round pick in this upcoming 2023 NFL draft. We're going to look at a couple different writers, a couple different mock drafts, and see who they have kind of identified as a potential suitor for the Ravens in the first round. One of the first sites I checked out for mock drafts was NFL.com. And so we're going to take a look at two of the mock drafts that they had on their website, right? So Bucky Brooks, he's a writer for NFL.com. He chose, right, Anthony Richardson, the quarterback out of Florida, as the Ravens' first pick in this upcoming draft, right? And Daniel Jeremiah, another writer for NFL.com, he selected Anthony Richardson, quarterback out of Florida, for the Ravens as well. So I have a feeling, this is going to get mocked a lot to us because of this situation with Lamar Jackson and his contract and things being up in the air. As of right now, I feel that moving forward, we really won't know what the Ravens are going to choose to do with their first round pick until the Lamar Jackson contract situation has kind of been solved and figured out, right? If Lamar decides to return and stay a Raven for life and sign a long-term contract extension with the Ravens, I feel that with our first round pick, we're going to identify, a different weapon for us to use for him. Whereas if Lamar decides not to return with the Ravens and there's a tag and trade or sign and trade or something along those lines that leaves us with our first round pick, but we are quarterbackless, I think it's an interesting pick. I think it's a very interesting pick in that case. Anthony Richardson is very raw, but he has some great athletic traits. He's a very mobile quarterback. He brings a lot to the table in terms of passing the ball downfield and the power that he has in that arm. But for the sake of this show and for the sake of this segment, we're going to assume that Lamar Jackson stays with the Ravens and signs a contract extension with the Ravens. Another site I checked out for mock drafts, a site that I love, one of my favorite sites to go to read about sports news, football news, CBS Sports. Great writers there, always pumping out mock drafts. So we're going to take a look at a couple. First and foremost, Chris Trapasso, writer for CBS Sports. In his mock draft, he has the Ravens selecting cornerback Christian Gonzalez out of Oregon with the 22nd pick for the Ravens. I find that a solid pick. I think he's a great cornerback prospect. I love the Pac-12. I love Oregon. Their defense has been pretty solid the last couple of years. Kayvon Thibodeau came out of there. Noah Sewell coming out of there. Christian Gonzalez, I believe he's about 6'1", 200 pounds. And I think he'd be a great pick if Marcus Peters does not choose to stay with the Ravens, right? So I think a lot of these picks have to do with what happens prior to the draft occurring. Marcus Peters signs, stays. Christian Gonzalez, not my favorite pick. Marcus Peters walks, hits a different team. Maybe a good pick, right? Ryan Wilson out of CBS Sports, he has the Ravens taking Bijan Robinson, running back out of Texas with the Ravens' first pick. I love Bijan Robinson. Who doesn't love Bijan Robinson? He's one of the greatest backs in all of college football and all of college football, like the history of college football. He's one of the greatest backs I've ever seen play, and I watched Reggie Bush growing up. I saw a couple flashes of Reggie when I saw Bijan Robinson. So, although I am a big fan of Bijan Robinson, I don't know if taking a running back in the first round is a great idea. I know we have Gus Edwards next year. We have J.K. El Toro Dobbins coming back. But Gus is a $5 million cap hit next year. And it would be the last year of his contract with us. So, interesting selection. I would be happy either way. If we choose not to go with Bijan Robinson and pursue a wide receiver or maybe a different cornerback, I'd be happy with that. But at the same time, it's Bijan Robinson. If I would not be sad. I'll put it that I would not be upset if the Ravens walk up the card and they say, with the 22nd pick, the Baltimore Ravens select Bijan Robinson. I would not be upset. I would be very happy. But still leaves a lot to be wanted. Now, the last couple of mock drafts I took a look at, they came from different sites, Yahoo Sports, Pro Football Network, and ESPN Plus, right? So Yahoo Sports, Paul Flutak, he's a writer for Yahoo Sports. He had the Ravens selecting Jaxon Smith-Njigba, receiver out of Ohio State. I think everybody's aware of who he is. And I think he'd be a pretty solid pick, right? I know a lot of people are in the talks of the Ravens trading for Deandre Hopkins, and I think there's a pretty solid argument that could be made that it would be a wiser decision for the Ravens in the long term to save the first round pick, draft a wide receiver, and maybe try to acquire DeAndre Hopkins by trading, I don't know, maybe a player, maybe Chuck Clark, maybe Gus Edwards. Maybe we could trade we have a pick 86 in the top 100, pick 86. I believe that's in the third round. Maybe we could couple that with maybe a fourth round pick, fifth round pick next year, try to get DeAndre Hopkins over here. I think that'd be sick. But if I had to pick, I would hold on to the 22 pick and pick a receiver. I personally would not trade away the 22 pick overall for DeAndre Hopkins, right? DeAndre Hopkins, great receiver. Everybody knows that. He's a, historic wide receiver. He's 31 years old, okay? His base salary is $19.4 million, and his cap hit is above $30 million. So I think we need to keep that in mind when we're thinking about trading away our first-round pick. Ian Cummings, Pro Football Network, also had Jaxon Smith-Njigba mocked to the Ravens with the 22nd overall pick. Love it. Love it. Jaxon Smith-Njigba, you are a future Raven, my friend. You are a future Raven, and I love you already. Last but not least, Mel Kiper, the mock draft guru. Everybody knows him. Mock drafts basically came from him. Mel Kiper has the Ravens selecting Quentin Johnston, wide receiver out of TCU, probably the number one wide receiver prospect in this draft class. He has him coming to the Ravens. Me, oh my, how happy I would be. Talk about a big downfield receiving threat for Lamar Jackson. It's about damn time. I love EDC, but if EDC can somehow swing this, if he can somehow swing Quentin Johnston coming to the Ravens, he is our first overall pick in this upcoming draft. My God, that would be amazing. All right, so earlier in the show, I was talking about the hypothetical situation where we basically have to choose between Jaxon Smith-Njigba and DeAndre Hopkins, right? Or Quentin Johnston and DeAndre Hopkins, right? So let's get into that argument real quick, right? A lot of people love DeAndre Hopkins. I think he's a great receiver. He's always been a great receiver. And although it would be fantastic to add him to the Ravens and, to see what he could bring to our pass game, I don't think he's worth our first round pick this year, right? And here's my argument. He's, like I said earlier in the show, he's 31. He's going to be 32. $19.4 million base salary, over $30 million cap hit, right? And what I didn't mention earlier, the last 2 years, he hasn't played the entire season, right? As you all might remember, for this current season, he missed the first 6 games due to a PEDS violation, right? And, whether or not he actually took PEDS or if his trainer effed up and something happened where it was snuck into his system, doesn't matter. He still missed games. Last year, he only played in 10 games. So I'm all for bringing him on, right? I'm all for bringing him into our team and allowing him to be the leader, the veteran leader of the wide receiver room, but I just don't think he's worth our first round pick this year. Give me Quentin Johnston. Give me Jaxon Smith-Njigba. I think they're both great receivers, right? Now, if instead of Jaxon Smith-Njigba or Quentin Johnston, it's Jordan Addison or Zay Flowers or Josh Downs, I don't know. I'm not sold on those 3 players personally. I'm not sold on Zay Flowers. I'm not sold on Jordan Addison, and I'm not sold on Josh Downs. I love Jordan Addison. I'm a huge Caleb Williams fan, huge USC fan. I just don't think he is worth a mid to late first round pick. I think there are better receivers that we can go out and get. We can trade with that first round pick. We can do something with it. But sign me up for Jaxon Smith-Njigba, sign me up for Quentin Johnston, and sign me up for trading a second round or a day 3 pick and a player maybe for DeAndre Hopkins. That's what I'm all for. Last but not least, I definitely want to finish up this show just by mentioning a couple offensive coordinator moves that have happened over the last couple of days. So as you know, some of you might have heard or some of you might know, Frank Reich was just signed. I believe it was signed today, right? January 27th. Signed today to become the next head coach for the Carolina Panthers. I know for a lot of the fans that I follow on Twitter, on social media, a lot of us wanted Frank Reich to become the offensive coordinator for the Ravens. I was a fan of that. There's only a couple other people I'd prefer over Frank Reich. But unfortunately, he has been taken from our list of potential offensive coordinators. So that does leave us with, a couple good fits, in my opinion. Bobby Slowick, the passing game coordinator for the 49ers, or Zach Robinson, the passing game coordinator for the Rams. And of course, my favorite, Byron Leftwich, the old offensive coordinator for the Buccaneers. So we shall see. That's going to wrap it up for today's show. Thank you so much for tuning in and checking out the Third Bowl. I'm your host, Devin Welsh. Don't forget to smash that like button, give me a follow, and subscribe. Thank you so much. That's going to wrap it up.